So, having done our readings about and having discussion about homeless students and the McKinney-Vento Act and having our speakers from Urban Peak, um, it really led well into the the one chapter that we read about working with low-income students, about being a warm demander, and I really like that phrase because that's really the kind of teacher I've always aspired to be, and it's the kind of teacher that I think my family, who aren't educators, I'm the first educator in my family, I think it's something that they recognize about me. I had a conversation with my mom a couple of weeks ago, but like right around the end of the school year, and she had said she had been on the phone with my uncle, and they were talking about me and what kind of teacher they kind of saw me being based on the stories that I told of my classroom and things like that, and what I was really focused on. And they both agreed that in school they hadn't been the best students, and so they would have absolutely hated to have me as a teacher because I hold my students accountable. I think by the time you're in high school, you really have to start owning your end of the deal. And I don't let my kids get away with not doing something because they have all these excuses. In my classroom this past semester, I really worked on having it gets done because you need the practice, and it gets done because it's not just busy work, it's purposeful, and it'll all come together. And that was something that my students struggled with their junior papers, but that's another story. But my mom and uncle agreed that they would have probably hated to have me as a teacher, but they also recognized that I'm the type of teacher that they needed when they were in high school to push them to go that little extra step further, to realize that they are intelligent and capable. And that's something that I really worked hard on during my student teaching placement, was advocating for students and pushing them, because I think students, if you have high expectations and consistent expectations and you're there for students who need additional support to reach those expectations, students will meet and exceed your expectations. They just need to know that you're going to be there to push them. And I think what was sad about that chapter was how students can tell when a teacher has given up. And I know that from my experience. I know that from observing in classrooms in Colorado Springs throughout my undergrad. Students can tell as soon as the teacher's not going to push them anymore. And it's kind of like a dual-edged sword. It's like throwing your hands up and saying, like, I'm done. But then as soon as you mentally do that, it ripples out, and then your students perceive you to be a bad teacher because you aren't pushing them anymore, even if they weren't complying with you pushing them in the first place. The fact that you are no longer pushing them, I think, is incredibly detrimental to how they view their academic life, how they view school. I had read the hidden curriculum of work probably 5 or 6 times at this point, and every time I come back to it, it completely just floors me. It's something that I had suspected, and I know it's from like 1980, but I think it's still very, very applicable to situations today. And I'm sure we're going to talk about it a lot in class. And it's just something that I think it's like a self-perpetuating cycle in that situation, in that students of lower incomes are taught to be like they approach, or the teachers in the schools in those areas had approached teaching as a factory job. You line up the kids, you feed them the information, they regurgitate it back to you, and life goes on. And so I think it's something to really keep in mind, especially when you get to like the executive like school, the affluent executive school, where everything is focused on analysis and there's no creativity, and students are expected to think through everything, and why do you think that, and how are you going to present yourself. I was thinking little elementary schools, little elementary school kids being student teachers, having to teach their peers grammar. And I mean, yeah, teaching somebody is the best way to learn something, but it just, the fact that the teacher gave all of the authority in the class to the child standing at the front of the room, it seems like the priorities in these schools are so different. And that's not equitable. It's not equitable education, and that's a problem. We'll talk more. I loved the readings, as you guessed, Rania.